Neil, are you okay?
Hello.
Yes, we have a bit of a sad morning, don't we, here in England, all over the world, really, because the passing of physicist Stephen Hawking at the age of 76.
Yeah, some terrible news to wake up to. Such a wonderful brain, and he had a lot of very good opinions, and
he seemed
just
to
a massive loss.
Defy death. He did defy death because in the 1960s, I think 1963, he was diagnosed with motor neuron disease, otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease, where he had this constant wasting of the muscles, and he was told, you have 2 years to live.
And he's been in and out of hospital ever since, and many times defied death.
But it's proof, I think, in a way, that if you keep your mind busy, everything else will follow.
It worked for him.
Yeah, and he did it without the power of prayer or healing, because he was a declared atheist, wasn't he?
Confirmed atheist. He was very quiet on the subject for many years, just getting on with his science, and he would talk about God as in, not a God of the Bible or anything like that, just about if there is a God created. He doesn't seem to pay much attention to what's going on, sort of thing.
Yes.
So a lot of people used to say he was religious, but he came out and affirmed a few years back, no, I am an atheist.
That's right. And that actually, I think we have that clip here where he was interviewed. I think it was about 20 odd years ago, where he was asked about God, and he didn't come out and say he was an atheist then and there, but it was very interesting what he said. So we'll just play that clip.
Do you think that God can intervene in the universe as he wants, or is God too bound by the laws of science?
The question of whether God is bound by the laws of science is a bit like the question, can God make a stone that is so heavy that he cannot lift it? I don't think it is very useful to speculate on what God might or might not be able to do. Rather, we should examine what he actually does with the universe we live in. All our observations suggest that it operates according to well-defined laws. These laws may have been ordained by God, but it seems that he does not intervene in the universe to break the laws, at least not once he had set the universe going.
Okay, so there you go. And he did go on later to say, referring back to that interview, he said, what I meant by we would know the mind of God is that we would know everything that God would know if there were a God, which there isn't. I'm an atheist. And that was in 2014 when he joined the Starmus Festival as keynote speaker. He declared himself an atheist there.
I think what happened with a lot of scientists from the 70s and 80s, isn't that? They basically just wanted to get on with their work, really didn't want to approach the God question very much. They just wanted to carry on. But as many have, they've got more and more worried about the science denial that's going on in the world, and they felt they had to speak up on the issue. And I think that's really what he was doing. Yeah,
and we still use terms like the God particle and things like that. I think it's going to be a while before all of that just completely shuffles off. But yeah, we're going to miss him, aren't we? I mean, there was a great film about him a couple of years ago with Eddie Redmayne. I see he's tweeted his condolences this morning. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff on TV now, I think, a lot of documentaries about him. And hopefully, his work will just continue to improve the world. He was big on things like climate change and all that.
Yep, and over here he was very much anti-Brexit. Thought it would do UK a lot of damage. Without a doubt, the work he's done has already changed the world and will continue to do, because scientists today are building on the work he's done.
Exactly. And in fact, I'm thinking I might have to add a Pinterest board for Stephen Hawking and the work he did, because Talk Beliefs has a Pinterest page now, or Pinterest site, and it's only got 3 followers at the moment because I just started it, but I'm really pleased with it. It's got some of my videos on it, of course, but it's also got things like cults and cult leaders, different religions, Mormons, Buddhists, and so on and so forth. Got a lot of humanist memes, and yeah, if you want to go over there, it's Talk Beliefs YouTube channel is the name of the Pinterest site, and I'd love it if you could follow.
I think a Pinterest board dedicated to Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, why not?
Would be very nice.
Yeah, I think I'll start that today. If that is, the world doesn't end first.
Here we go again.
Yeah, okay. Now, it comes from the Metro. The end of the world is going to kick off on March 19th this year, and I think that's a few days away. Apparently, the rapture the article says the rapture, the bit where God comes down and saves all the Christians and bins the rest of us, is going to kick off at that point, various sites have claimed. Much of this is based on the Jubilee prophecies of Rabbi Judah ben Samuel, a 12th century mystic who wrote prophecies about the messianic end times. Now, this guy wrote that when the Ottomans conquer Jerusalem, they will rule over Jerusalem for 8 jubilees. Afterwards, Jerusalem will become no man's land for 1 jubilee, and then in the 9th jubilee, it will once again come back into the possession of the Jewish nation, which would signify the beginning of the messianic end time. Now, are you following all this?
Well, what's a jubilee? How long is a jubilee?
Oh, gosh, a couple of years or something like that. Anyway, it all seems to add up to the world ending this week.
Yeah, apparently it takes some pretty tortured maths to twist it into it ending this week. And of course, someone in the 12th century can tell exactly when the world's going to end. It didn't work out too well for the Mayans. No. They had an end date, and that sort of didn't work out.
I think the Mayans just ran out of tablets to carve into, and people thought it meant it was the end of their calendar.
Yeah.
It's just they got fed up.
And it's being given more credence, obviously, because Trump recognising Jerusalem as the...
Yeah.
So, yeah, certain people are believing this nonsense.
Oh, here it is. It's 50 years. A jubilee is 50 years.
50 years.
The world will end in 2018, supposedly because the rabbi predicted that the Turks would rule Jerusalem for 8 jubilees, which was accurate, but he also predicted that the messianic end times would begin 1 jubilee, that is 50 years after Jerusalem returned to Jewish rule.
Wasn't that
47?
So that would have been, so that's not 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some weird maths going on here.
I know this has happened so many times with religious people, not just main religions but cults as well, just adding things up, and then they get to a point and they say, oh, it's like when Bishop Ussher decided that the world was 6,000 years old, and because he added up everything in the Bible, and he got back to this point and said, I know exactly how old the earth is.
No doubt that what's going to happen is they'll be recalculating and coming up with another date.
Oh yeah. I have a feeling we will be here for the show next week, so I'm not going to sort of just empty my bank account or anything just yet. But someone else who actually also was a bit of a prophet, or thought he was a prophet, was of course David Koresh, and you know who I'm talking about?
Yes, the Waco leader.
Yeah, the Waco leader and so-called prophet, and he decided that the world would end, obviously, in his lifetime. And he predicted that he and his followers in his compound in Waco, Texas, back in the 90s, would all come to a terrible end and everyone would attack them. Not much of a prophecy, considering he was stockpiling guns and the word was getting out that he had fathered children with children and all sorts of other horrible things. I sort of brought it on himself, but an article which has come out in Newsweek.com this week says that one of the siege survivors still thinks dead cult leader David Koresh is the Messiah. So the article says a survivor of the Waco siege has broken his silence and revealed that he still thinks cult leader David Koresh is the Son of God. It goes on to say, in 1993, members of the apocalyptic Branch Davidian cult, led by Koresh, and U.S. police and federal officials confronted each other in a 2-month standoff, that was 51 days, at the cult's Waco, Texas compound. When officials attempted to storm the compound, cult members allegedly torched the building, and 76 people, 20 of them children, died in the resulting inferno. Now, there's all sorts of controversy about that, that they didn't torch the building, that CS gas was thrown in, and it tends to catch on fire, and it was all the fault of those who laid siege to the place. But now we have this man, Graeme Craddock, who you'd think he would have come to his senses by now.
Yeah.
He seems to still think that David is the Son of God. We're just going to listen to a clip of him now.
These days, Graeme lives a lonely, ordinary life. But his faith in David Koresh remains undimmed, and his belief that Koresh will return, that there will be the second coming that was heralded by Waco.
Do you have to believe that David Koresh was who he said he was? Because otherwise it is impossible to comprehend what happened in that compound, what happened to those women and children, if he wasn't who he said he was?
I mean, what happened is so horrible for me. In my mind, the only way I deal with it is the belief somehow that God's going to fix this up one day. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but if there is a God, he can put things back together again. There's a day in the Bible that calls the great and terrible day of the Lord. We're going to find out then whether David Koresh was who he says he was.
Right, so Neil, what do you think of people who hang on to beliefs like this?
Oh, it just shows how badly indoctrinated they are, that they can't change their thoughts over all this time. It's just, there's so much evidence to the contrary that he wasn't a prophet. I mean, planning to be murdered is different about being a prophet, prophesizing your own.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? As so many are.
Yeah, and I think the lady who asked the question was right. It is the fact that he has this guilt for being alive, that he has to hang on so it was real, because otherwise he was involved, knowingly or unknowingly, in the deaths of lots of people.
Yeah. Did you see the TV series?
No, I haven't yet.
I'll have to lend it to you. It's really good. It's very distressing, obviously, because of what happens, but it's a 6-part miniseries, and Taylor Kitsch plays David Koresh very well. Sounds exactly like him. And you kind of get a feeling of what it was like on the inside of the compound. And they don't come across as total wackos, although they clearly were. But these people really did think that this guy Koresh was genuine. But really, all he had was a charismatic personality and ability to memorize the Bible. I think that's what impressed a lot of his adherents.
And as with many of these cult leaders, he basically wanted sex with a lot of his.
It does tend to come into these a lot, doesn't it? You know, it's whether it's 19, the Mormons or Children
19
of God,
wives, the youngest a 12-year-old girl, so he was a paedophile as well.
Yeah, but they don't. The followers who are still around, not all of them, but some of them still think.
Yeah, they justify it because they say it's in the Bible. So they again, people of a certain persuasion are justifying paedophilia.
You can find anything in the Bible or the Quran or whatever holy book, because these books are very dense, full of stuff, and you just leaf through them enough and say, King David had lots of wives, Solomon had lots of wives.
Yep.
That's okay.
It's just a shame that this guy's had to live with it all these years.
Yeah.
And still hasn't obviously come to terms with it properly.
Yeah, sad really. And it's interesting to note that I used to think that the cult was named after him, the Branch Davidians, but I think it was the other way around, because Branch Davidians have been around since the 1930s. They're actually an offshoot of the Seventh-day Adventist, I believe. And David Koresh, it's not his real name. His real name is actually Vernon Howell, and he changed it to David Koresh, which has some sort of significance, and I think to fit in with the Davidians.
Yes.
So he'd look like the prophet. And he played a mean guitar as well. I just thought I'd throw that in. But
so this ties in. So Jesus is supposed to be coming back as part of the previous end of the world story, and David Koresh was Jesus. So David Koresh is going to be coming back. Is this what we're saying now?
Yeah, but perhaps he already has come back in the form of that guy in Australia, AJ Miller. He's Jesus, isn't he? Or how about the guy in Siberia? He's also Jesus. He really looks like Jesus. Yeah. I don't know. I get confused with all these end of the worlds and Jesuses and so on and so forth. But I think really what these people need is a good old-fashioned exorcism.
Yes, they're obviously possessed. If they think they're Jesus, they must be possessed.
But the good news is, according to The Guardian, exorcists are back.
Well, it's good news according to the Catholic Church.
Yeah. But actually it's not that good news, because it says people are getting hurt. The rise of exorcism in Catholic and evangelical churches is like a new inquisition, but there are ways to stop the witch hunt. The Vatican has just set up a new exorcism training course, can you believe it, following an alleged increase in demonic possession. According to the Sicilian priest and exorcist, I'm going to not pronounce this correctly, Benigno Paglia, speaking on Vatican Radio, there are 500,000 cases reported in Italy yearly, and demand for assistance has tripled. Paglia lays the blame on people who visit fortune tellers and tarot readers. These practices open the doors, he says, to the devil and to possession.
Yeah, because that's what causes it. It's not that their minds have been warped by the church to believe that such a nonsense exists in the first place. Blame other nonsense peddlers.
Yes, they're afraid people are going to go to other nonsense peddlers and not come to their nonsense.
Yeah.
So they have to sort of like poo-poo it, you see.
Oh dear.
Recent UK government statistics suggest that almost 1,500 child abuse cases a year are linked to notions of witchcraft and demonic possession. The Metropolitan Police's Project Violet was set up to explore child abuse connected to spiritual beliefs. And this goes on in Africa quite a bit now.
Yeah, and it goes on in Muslim countries as well. They call them jinns, don't they?
Yeah.
Possession.
We know somebody who was exorcised, and
Yeah.
he was brought up Muslim, but decided he wasn't much of a believer, and wasn't a good little Muslim, and they brought an exorcist round, which is basically meant, chanting over him and
Locking people in rooms and stuff like that.
yeah, it was just scary enough. But why should this happen, Neil, in this day and age? It doesn't seem possible.
Well, it's just scary, isn't it? I mean, this all comes down to the science denial that's going on around the world at the moment. Lets these sort of things rise back up. It just seems absolutely amazing that we are getting an increase in these sort of things where they should have just fallen away by now and shouldn't exist. It's just nonsense of the highest order.
I don't know. It was even a few years ago. There was a child found dismembered in the Thames, which they linked back to some sort of ritualistic exorcism rite.
Yeah, people are dying. People are dying. People are being mentally scarred. They're being physically tortured. Quite frankly, it's just disgusting. And anyone who has had anything to do with this, they should just look in the mirror. And they're not a good person.
Yeah,
they're not a good person.
This should have ended at the Salem witch trials.
Yeah,
in the 1600s.
And it's just another example of how things don't always progress forwards. I mean, many people live their lives just think, things can move forward, things get better, knowledge grows, but things can go backwards, and we have to be very careful of this.
But I think this Generation Z is going to be a good one, because there was a study I was reading the other day that most of Generation Z, these kids born 1999 onwards, are pretty non-religious.
And vast majority of
into
them,
their science.
Yeah, vast majority of them are living sort of like a humanistic lifestyle, even if they don't call themselves humanist.
Yeah.
They are absolutely, and it's going to be a shock to the older generation, actually.
Yeah, they don't have to call themselves anything. They just have to not engage in these horrible and hurtful acts that people have been doing.
Maybe in Italy, I'm purely guessing now, I don't know, but maybe in Italy, because the massive rise in the calls is actually parents and grandparents, because their kids are actually just living normal lives, they think they've been possessed. Maybe it is actually the progression that is.
That's an interesting theory. Yeah.
But there's just a question to put out there. I haven't seen any studies on it, so
the demon of critical thinking must be exercised.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past them. A few evangelical groups I'm thinking of right now.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, I don't want to end on a sad note, but
it's been a sad show.
It has, starting off with Stephen Hawking. But I think getting back to Stephen Hawking, I think the best thing to do is to take that book, A Brief History of Time, from where it was sitting on our coffee tables for the past 20 years, and actually read the damn thing, which no one has done.
Yeah, I mean, it's a seminal book, science book, and it must be read.
He said himself that nobody ever got to the end of it, as far as he knows. But I'll give it a go.
Let's just hope that out of tragedy comes some good, because hopefully there's going to be a lot of news about science in the next few weeks because of him. There'll be a lot of programs about him, and maybe that'll inspire some.
It'll inspire some people
to.
I'm sure there's some youngsters who haven't heard of him, and maybe not just youngsters who will go, oh, that's an interest. I didn't know. And then because of all the news about it at the moment, they'll look into his work and perhaps even carry on his work.
Yep. Definitely.
And then we'll discover all sorts of things, like that God exists outside of time, as Christians keep telling me. I don't think they'll find that.
No.
Okay, so thank you, Neil, for joining me. And it's a very sunny day, and I think we should go out and enjoy ourselves.
Live life to the most.
Live life to the most. And if you like the Talk Belief News, please give us a thumbs up. Please head on over to Patreon if you'd like to support us, and subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget Pinterest. See you next week.